Penn State did upgrade the linebacker room this offseason, but it might not be enough. And Jim Knowles was blunt about where this group is right now.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked on to Penn State football, and as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day, your daily source for all things Penn State sports. My name is Zach Seyko, and I am your host of the show, credentialed media member for both Penn State football and Penn State wrestling. Well, practice once again was opened up to the media, and we might have gotten a hint at the leader in this QB2 battle. James Franklin named multiple true freshmen that could make an immediate impact, or at least an impact sooner rather than later. But we got to begin with this. Knowles was blunt about where this linebacker room is. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Thank you to the everydayers, and let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. Just a friendly reminder. So beginning with what defensive coordinator Jim Knowles had to say. Also talk about who's leading in the battle for the Mike linebacker spot. Who's going to lead? Who's going to wear the green dot and be the quarterback of the defense? I'll name those three players too. But Knowles said, this is a paraphrase of a quote that he said at the most recent practice, that there are only three players he currently trusts out of that linebacker room, and he used the word trust. That's blunt. It's harsh. How you want to interpret that, that's up to you. I see it as a motivational thing, that, hey, this group's not up to task right now. They need to do more. Remember, Knowles is old school, right? Old school edition of football, but he's a defensive mastermind. So he calls it as he sees it, and he sees the game pretty well. But outside of the three, and these are the guys that are battling for the green dot in the process. Amari Campbell, who just transferred in. Tony Rojas, who could take that next step and potentially be that elite linebacker for Penn State. And Dom DeLuca. He's played a lot of college football. He knows the game well at where he is with this stage. Fortunately for Penn State, they run a 4-2-5. You have two linebackers on the field at a given time, but the idea was that these guys were going to rotate in pretty frequently. And when Jim Knowles says right now that I don't know how I can trust the reserves at this point in time, that includes someone like Keon Wiley, which I was surprised at. I am extremely high on Keon Wiley, particularly eventually having that breakout year, but he had an injury last season. And it seems like he hasn't truly taken that next step when he had a pretty good Rose Bowl game, but that was so long ago at this point in time. So Keon Wiley, Anthony Specca, Kari Jaxon, LeVar Arrington II, Alex Tatch, Dakari Nelson. These guys have not truly separated themselves at this point in time. The depth is a question mark. If Jim, now I get it. Anthony Specca has been tabbed as a potential breakout player. There's obviously optimism for LeVar Arrington II. And Knowles didn't condemn the group that they're never going to get better. He has optimism for this group long term. He highlighted Alex Tatch in particular, Anthony Specca. Dan Connor has been high on specific linebackers as well. I like what I saw out of Kari Jaxon at practice, for example. I think Kari Jaxon is moving very well. He's dealt with his fair share of injuries. But right now, as we sit here at the moment, Knowles has said there are three linebackers that I can only trust at this point in time. Campbell, DeLuca, and Rojas. One of them's going to wear the green dot. We have a little bit of clarity there, or at least that all three of them are capable of it, but who's going to do it? That's going to be interesting, and I'll give you my prediction in just a moment here. Knowles also talked about the fact that he's rolled with three linebackers in the past, whether that was at Ohio State or Oklahoma State or any of Duke or any of his previous ventures, that he said it's not ideal. I've been there, I've done that, but I know how to handle it in this situation. If I had to predict who's going to eventually step up, again, it's really any of those names. Keon Wiley is the veteran of the group. I would think that, again, I had a lot of optimism for him. I'm not saying that this is it. There's not going to be any players that emerge. No, and that's not what Knowles is saying either. But going into the beginning of the season, you're going to work with those three. You got to get them reps. That's how these guys get better. You got to get Seyko reps. But do you want to give them consequential reps if you're not able to trust them? Most people are going to point to Seyko being the guy. I'd say Keon Wiley, since he is the veteran of the group. Dakari Nelson, like his athleticism, but he hasn't been playing linebacker for a long time. He's another veteran caliber player that, what do you have with him? And I do find it interesting that really nobody is separating themselves from the group. That all of these guys, that it could be Nelson one day. It could be Seyko another day. You don't know what Penn State is going to be dealing with at its linebacker depth. I would look for Keon Wiley and Anthony Seyko to be those next players to step up. I think it's going to take some time for all of the true freshmen, whether that is LeVar Arrington II, because I think the game is too fast for any of them. Alex Tatch. I think people forget about Cam Smith. Cam Smith enrolled over the course of the summer. He's promising. I think he's flashed at a couple of some of those practice sessions that I've seen him at. He's impressed. Hey, he's ahead for where he is as a true freshman who enrolled a little later. But right now, those guys aren't going to be counted on at this point in time. So it is up to Seyko. It's up to Wiley. It's up to Kari, Jaxon, and Nelson to be those guys so that you don't have to ultimately rely on those freshmen. Linebacker is going to be a question mark. There's a chance that this group could be the weakest link of the entire team. They did upgrade with Amari Campbell. That was huge. Right? Tamir Robinson. Campbell's better than Tamir Robinson, objectively speaking. So imagine if Penn State never made that move. Imagine if they either A, Robinson never transferred. He stayed with the team. Or B, you didn't get a replacement for Robinson. You didn't get Amari Campbell. This group would be in a lot worse shape. So thank goodness Penn State was able to get Amari Campbell. He could be the guy that wears the green dot. And honestly, if you want my prediction or my opinion, which is why you come and watch these shows or listen to them, Amari Campbell should be the guy that wears the green dot. Dom DeLuca has never played Mike linebacker. He's always been a strong side. I get it. He's a veteran. They're all cerebral players. They all are. That's why they have a case. That's why they're having a 3-man race for this one spot to be the true quarterback of the defense. I want to see Tony Rojas make those electrifying plays. I don't want him to worry about having to scout the offense and learn. I want him to be best at what he's best at. Amari Campbell has done this at the Power 4 level. And I think James Franklin makes a great point when he says this, that it's a new defense. Everybody's starting fresh. So despite Tony Rojas and Dom DeLuca being at Penn State longer than Amari Campbell, they technically don't have a leg up on him when it comes to processing the defense right now. Knowles hasn't been here this long. This is all brand new for everybody. So it is an even fight. Give me Amari Campbell to not only win the starting Mike linebacker job, but be the guy that wears the green dot and calls the defense on the field. Now we got to talk about the freshmen, because I know linebacker is going to get some criticism here, but especially on the defensive line, Penn State needs this. Penn State has 3 freshmen, all on the defensive side, that could make an impact sooner rather than later. I'll tell you about them coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. Now, that's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings you into your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface. And on your laptop or on your phone, Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization to your spending and finally feel like you're in control of your money without even touching a spreadsheet. Now, you might have individual goals, but if you share accounts, if you have a partner that you have joint financial goals with, Monarch makes it simple to review your finances with your partner. You can both see your budgets, your goals, spending activity, all in one place. So it's not jumbled, it's not spread out, anything like that. Don't let the financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's right, 50% off your first year. That is 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege. Still to come on this episode, we're going to talk about the QB2 battle. Danny O'Brien spoke with the media, but we did get a hint at who could be leading at this point in time based on a recent practice session here. Got to pick up with the true freshmen that are impressing at training camp. I imagine some people have some guesses, but they're all on defense. So I know that people are pretty high on wide receiver Kobe Howard, and he looks good. He's been running with the ones and twos, but James Franklin, you got to listen to the coaches. James Franklin, when asked about who's generating that buzz, and he didn't just name the one player like he did a season ago. Tyser Denmark and I guess Cooper Cousins as well. But this time, three defenders in particular. Jim Knowles has raved about them as well. Go figure, right? He's the defensive coordinator. But those three, two of them are on the defensive line. Yvonne Kemaju, Chaz Coleman, two defensive ends. And then defensive back, cornerback, Darius Dixon. Those three guys are talented. They are college ready. They can play right away, and they can make an impact sooner rather than later. It's going to take time, right? Young, up-and-coming stars, they're not going to be ready. Abdul Carter and some select players like, Saquon Barkley, right? Those guys are the exception where they come in right away and make their presence known. I think with what Penn State, and look at this in particular, Yvonne Kemaju and Chaz Coleman, hey, Penn State probably should feel pretty good about where they are with defensive end right now. You have Denai Dennis Sutton and Zariah Fisher. You lost Abdul Carter. How are you going to replicate or at least not have a significant drop-off? Well, we know for a fact that Denai Dennis Sutton could be All-America this season and will definitely be a high-end draft pick in next year's NFL draft. But then Zariah Fisher has been tabbed as a true breakout player. They believe internally at Penn State that Zariah Fisher is, at least from what we could be led to believe, an all-conference caliber player. So that's your 1-2 punch at defensive end at both the starting spots. So Penn State has to feel good about that. But then Jalen Harvey, Malachi Williams, I think both of those guys are going to, again, same situation, but they've been there. They trust them as those backups. It'd be nice to have Max Granville. But then Yvonne Kemaju looks the part of a strong side defensive end. That guy's a true freshman. Go check out the practice highlights here on Locked On Nittany Lions. Post them every time we have a practice session that we're at. And Kemaju does not look like he just finished high school recently. That's the importance of enrolling early. But Chaz Coleman has not been playing defensive end for a long time. And he's made such a leap forward. Jim Knowles even already gave him a nickname, the Chazmanian Devil. So there is a lot of optimism, high expectations for not only Kemaju, but Coleman as well. I do think if you want my depth chart, I think it's Denai Dennis Sutton, Yvonne Kemaju, and Malachi Williams. 1, 2, 3 at strong side defensive end. Weak side defensive end, Zariah Fisher, Jalen Harvey, and then Chaz Coleman. But the fact that they could make a move with Anai White, who comes in as a defensive end, of course, trying to rebuild what he was as a prospect and see if you can have him reach that potential. But Penn State, with all that uncertainty at defensive end, now actually has a little bit of clarity, and then they make a move. Like, hey, let's try Anai White at defensive tackle and see if we can actually get more talent out of him at this spot than what he could be for us at defensive end, because we like what we have at the 3 deep. Again, Max Granville would help a ton. This is more about what Deion Barnes has done in his short time being a full-time defensive line coach. To take Abdul Carter as a linebacker and convert him to defensive end, and in months, just months, didn't take him a year, 2 years, became a top 3 NFL draft pick. I get it. Abdul Carter's an insanely good football player at his core, but coaching matters. And Deion Barnes helped train Abdul Carter to be one of the best edge defenders in all of college football, and then one of the best prospects in this year's NFL draft. But to continue to see it, Yvonne Kemaju already breaking out as a true freshman, lofty expectations for Chaz Coleman, somebody who has not been playing defensive end for a long time. That's a testament to Deion Barnes. And then, of course, we could go to defensive tackle and talk about Zane Durant and Alonzo Ford. But focusing on defensive ends, you're going to see a good amount of Yvonne Kemaju. I think sooner. I think and James Franklin named them in this order. Kemaju first, then Darius Dixon, then Chaz Coleman. Coleman, I think, has high upside and will be, out of those 3 freshmen, the guy that, will take some time to ramp up. I think Kemaju will make an impact right away, or at least we'll see him roll with the 2 deep. And then Darius Dixon, I keep focusing on defensive ends because there's 2 out of the 3, right? 66%. For Darius Dixon, I mean, Jim Knowles, I think, said it best. With all the college football players that he's coached over his career, to say that Dixon is one of the best true freshmen that he's ever seen, that praise is of the highest form. If Penn State wasn't so loaded at cornerback, I think he would be in line to have more reps, to have more snaps. But when you have A.J. Harris, who could potentially be All-America and a first-round pick in next year's NFL draft, Elliott Washington and Davian Collins, who are battling for that cornerback 2 spot, rave reviews about Kenny Wosley, right? Zion Tracy. There's not a lot of room for Darius Dixon to make an impact right now at this present moment. But with that being said, they're going to create an opportunity for him. He's created an opportunity for himself. Secondary's loaded, particularly at cornerback. Safety, Zach Wheatley. I think overall it's a work in progress. I'm not trying to say that it's in a bad situation, but you do need some clarity. Who's going to start at that strong safety spot? Who will be some players that rotate in a little more frequently behind Zach Wheatley, right? So safety does have some questions, but cornerback, very sound. That slot cornerback too, with Tracy. So Darius Dixon, the fact that they're going to play him right away when they don't have to. It might be in their better interest to redshirt him, but that's how good he is. The natural playmaking ability, knowing where to be at the right time, from the state of California all the way across to Pennsylvania. He just wanted to get better at football, and he knew that Penn State was going to be the best spot for him. I see Darius Dixon being a future lockdown cornerback, similar to a Joey Porter Jr. and an A.J. Harris here. That is the expectation here, and probably the same case at Penn State, that eventually he's that lockdown CB1, where he takes away a side of the football field or shadows the lead wide receiver on the opposing team. That is the ceiling for Darius Dixon, and it's already showing up as a true freshman. We'll see. We'll continue to keep tabs on Kobe Howard, for example, someone like Tyke Hayes at running back. So there are other true freshmen that I think, Malachi Goodman at offensive line. But based on what Penn State needs at defensive line, that's part of it. There's just an opportunity to make a name for yourself when it comes to Kemaju and Coleman. But there are a lot of talented freshmen on this team that, are going to have to wait their turn. Although Darius Dixon has proved that that doesn't have to be the case. You can make a name for yourself despite limited opportunity. Just keep an eye on a few of those other players. Tyke Hayes at running back, Kobe Howard at wide receiver, Malachi Goodman on the offensive line. Those guys are extremely talented and I think they probably have the yellow light, could see a green light depending on circumstances there. But it's nice to see that multiple freshmen are generating buzz, and there's a lot of excitement about what they can do in their first years. Now, QB2 battle. Ethan Grunkemeyer, Jaxon Smolik, it is neck and neck. But there might be some evidence here as far as who's leading, even just the slightest at this point in time. I'll tell you what that evidence is coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. It's one practice session. I get it. But at least there is somewhat of an indicator, and we're going to monitor this week by week, game by game. Who's going to go in first? Ethan Grunkemeyer, Jaxon, Smolik. Based on this most recent practice here on Tuesday, Ethan Grunkemeyer was running with the 1s and 2s. Jaxon Smolik was not. I think that's what's key, is that normally they wrote, at least over the past few practices, there really hasn't been separation between the 1s and the 2s and the reserves. They've been collectively working together. At least that's what we've seen. So for the first time at Penn State training camp, we have seen separation where Grunkemeyer was with the 1s and 2s, with Drew Aller, and they were rotating quite a bit, and that's why Kobe Howard, that's important to point out there, is that he was running with the 1s and 2s with the pass catchers. Jaxon Smolik was over with the reserves, the backups. So Beckham Kritza, the reserve pass catchers, a lot of freshmen, a lot of young players. That's telling to me. That's telling because this early in training camp, and I know it's a 10, 15, 20-minute session that we get to view for the media. But this is the first one that we see, and it's Grunkemeyer. And it's not the two of them together. But that's going to change. A week from now, we might see Smolik rolling with the 1s and 2s with the starters alongside Drew. And then Grunkemeyer goes over with the reserves, the 3s, the 4s, the 5s. This battle is close. But it's okay to assume that Grunkemeyer is going to win this at the end of the day. I do think it's going to go back and forth. Grunkemeyer, though, showing a lot of promise. I think Grunkemeyer had a very nice offseason. You see him working primarily with Drew Aller. They have a mutual quarterbacks coach. Grunkemeyer does have the higher ceiling. So it's up to Jaxon Smolik to try to close that gap or keep Grunkemeyer from really exceeding in this battle, from just transcending way ahead of him. Because Grunkemeyer and Smolik are pretty similar quarterbacks in terms of the prototype. And I mean, the easy comparison is, maybe some fans aren't going to like this, but both of them are very Sean Clifford-esque. They're tough, they're gritty, they're smart, they're able to move, they're mobile. They're not necessarily true dual threats. Maybe kind of they are, honestly. Smolik showed that in the blue-white game. He was able to roll out, run the football. These guys aren't track stars by any means, but Sean Clifford could run an option play, fake it to the running back, pull it, and go for 20, 25 yards. You're like, whoa, I didn't know this guy had that much speed. So I've said it before that I think these two are close. I do think ultimately Grunkemeyer does overtake Smolik long term. Grunkemeyer just looks a little stronger, a little more athletic. Maybe that has to do with the injury that Smolik had to deal with. But Grunkemeyer is pretty built for quarterbacks that are very similar. And again, in terms of the way they play the game, in terms of their overall build, that kind of thing, they're very similar. And talking to Danny O'Brien, he gave some insight into this. It's consistency. Who's going to be the most consistent at the end of the day? They would rather have consistently good than occasionally great. And those are the exact words of Danny O'Brien. That they want them to be, and both of them are. We saw Smolik outperform Grunkemeyer in that blue-white game. But then things can change. Summer season, fall camp. Either way, this battle, I think, is going to continue to carry on past QB2. This is going to go into spring of next year. And maybe it's decisive. Maybe it is. Where Grunk is that much better and they can name QB1 after the spring season. If I'm James Franklin, I'm trying to be strategic with this. I don't know that I want one of those quarterbacks to enter the transfer portal because I still have my reservations. It's not over. It is far from over. I'm not going to declare that even though I have my inclinations and most people are confident that Grunkemeyer is going to win because he was the higher rated quarterback out of high school, that's fine. But Smolik's not going to give up, and this battle is going to carry on. It has to, if you're looking at it from James Franklin and Penn State's perspective and Danny O'Brien's quarterback's coach, his perspective, that's going to hurt your depth chart going into next season if you lose one of them. So you have to carry out this battle through this season, through spring, all the way into next fall. Who wants to be Penn State's QB1? Or is somebody going to run from the competition if they don't like the way that things went down in spring or after the winter? I don't know. We saw it now in different circumstances. We did see Bo Pribula transfer out in the middle of December. That was to get him situated at Missouri. And they encouraged him. They said, go, because limited eligibility, go play. So like I said, different circumstances. But I think this battle is going to carry on all the way into fall camp of next year. So you're going to hear about Jaxon Smolik versus Ethan Grunkemeyer for the next year. For a year. So get comfortable, because this discussion's not going away until they truly declare Smolik or Grunk as the winner of any of these perceived battles. But this is going to be broken up into parts. QB2 for this season, the leader after spring football, and then the ultimate winner of the job, QB1, going into next season. But at this point in time, it looks like Grunk is somewhat leading in this battle as of yesterday and would be the presumed QB2 to go in if something were to happen with Drew Aller. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. Plenty of takeaways from practice. Let me know your thoughts about anything that we discussed down in the comments section. Thank you to the everydayers for making us a part of your regular routine. If you're not an everydayer, become one. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you to each and every one of you for checking out this specific episode. And for more coverage around Penn State football, recruiting, wrestling, basketball, you name it, we do this daily over here. It is Locked On Nittany Lions, coverage for all your favorite Penn State sports teams right here.